There is a prison no one sees. No bars, no chains, no guards, just a set of beliefs, buried so deep in the mind that the prisoner never even knows they've been sentenced. And that's the most dangerous prison of all, the one built with your own thoughts. You were not born with limits. You were not born broken. You were not born destined to play small. You were taught to shrink, taught to doubt, taught to expect little, ask for less, and survive instead of soar. But what if I told you the key has always been in your hands? Because your mindset, the thoughts you feed, the beliefs you water, the voice you obey, that's the architect of your life. Everything you see around you is a reflection of what you first accepted within you. So, if you want to change your life, don't start with your job. Don't start with your income. Don't even start with your habits. Start with your mind. Because the most expensive thing you can ever own is a limited mindset. Every dream you've buried, every goal you abandoned, every risk you never took, all of them trace back to a single point, what you believed was possible for you. And until you raise that standard in your mind, nothing around you will change. You must elevate your mindset like your life depends on it, because it does. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And you are the sum total of the thoughts you entertain most often. You are what you believe when no one's watching. What you whisper to yourself when the world goes quiet. That's why mindset isn't just about being positive. It's about power. It's about standing in the storm and saying, I will not bend. It's about seeing the obstacle and declaring, I will build through this. It's about becoming so unshakable on the inside that nothing on the outside can derail you. But that starts with awareness, with pulling back the curtain and asking, what stories am I still living in? Who told you you're not good enough? Who told you your dreams are too big? Who told you you're too late, too old, too unqualified? Because here's the truth. You are not living your potential. You are living your patterns, the habits of thought, the cycles of self-talk, the broken records of doubt you've played for years. And if you don't change the record, you'll keep dancing to a rhythm that was never yours. So elevate. Elevate the way you see yourself. Speak to yourself like someone you respect. Because how you speak is how you shape. Words are not passive, they're prophetic. And your inner dialogue is writing your destiny in real time. Start talking like a builder, a conqueror, a visionary. Tell yourself the truth, not the truth of your past, but the truth of your power. The truth of what's still possible when you align your mind with your mission. Because when your mindset rises, everything follows. Your energy shifts, your body changes, your habits strengthen, your relationships evolve, your results multiply. Because the outer world is simply a mirror of your inner world. And when the reflection gets clearer, the reality gets greater. But you must be deliberate. You must guard your mind like a fortress. Refuse to entertain the intruders. Fear, comparison, excuses, guilt. These are thieves, and they come dressed in the clothes of caution and realism. But they are liars. And the way you evict them? With decision, with discipline, with dominance over your thought life. Feed your mind the way a warrior feeds his body, daily, strategically, with precision and intention. Read what empowers you. Listen to what stretches you. Speak what ignites you. Surround yourself with people whose mindset makes you uncomfortable, because that's how you grow. And when the old voices come knocking because they will, you don't answer. You replace. You rewire. You reclaim. You remind yourself, I am not my past. I am not my pain. I am not my fears. I am the architect of my reality, and I build with the bricks of my beliefs. And once you believe differently, you will live differently. You'll walk into rooms with a different presence. You'll handle problems with a different posture. You'll see setbacks not as signals to stop, but as invitations to evolve. That's the power of mindset. It doesn't remove the challenge, it changes you. And when you change, the challenge loses its control. Because now you're leading, you're choosing. You're operating from the highest version of who you are, not the one life conditioned, but the one you were created to become. And here's the part most never understand. Mindset isn't fixed. It's not something you have or don't have. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows when it's challenged, when it's stretched, when it's pushed to its edge and made to respond with strength. So train it. Every morning, every decision, every moment of doubt, that's your gym. That's your arena. That's your proving ground. And every time you choose belief over fear, vision over victimhood, commitment over comfort, you elevate. Not just in mindset, but in everything. And the view from the top, it changes everything. From the mountaintop of an elevated mindset, you don't just see farther, you become farther. You realize the distance between where you are and where you want to be is not measured in miles. It's measured in mental altitude. It's not your circumstances that are holding you down. It's the ceiling you've built in your own mind. Made from doubts, reinforced by excuses, decorated with the graffiti of failure and fear. But ceilings were made to be broken. You are not a slave to your thoughts. You are the master of them. And mastery begins when you stop being reactive and start being relentless about the way you think. You don't control the storm, but you do control your sails, your direction, your attitude. And that is more powerful than the chaos outside. Because the storm can rage, but it cannot shake the man who has anchored his mind. Your thoughts shape your standards, and your standards shape your success. Raise one, and the others will follow. But you have to make it non-negotiable. You have to draw a line in the sand and declare, I no longer think like the version of me who settles. Because once you raise the standard in your mind, mediocrity becomes unbearable. You will no longer tolerate lazy conversations, weak associations, low expectations. You will crave clarity, growth, excellence, not as luxuries, but as essentials to your survival. And this shift, this ruthless elevation of your mental game, will change how you walk through the world. You'll stop explaining yourself. You'll stop justifying your goals. You'll stop trying to fit into rooms you were meant to redesign because you've outgrown the need for approval. You've upgraded your inner world, and now your outer world must rise to meet it. And some won't like it. Some will say you've changed, and they'll be right, because you have. You've upgraded your identity, rewired your focus, recalibrated your worth. And what once felt comfortable now feels like a cage, because the old you can't breathe in the air of a higher altitude. Understand this, your mindset is the thermostat of your life, not the thermometer. It doesn't reflect the temperature, it sets it. And if you don't set it deliberately, the world will set it for you. Most people are walking around with their minds tuned to survival, getting by, making it through, staying safe. But you are not made to survive. You were made to soar. And that requires risk. That requires faith. That requires believing in a version of yourself you haven't seen yet, but trust is real. That version is built one thought at a time, one belief at a time, one fearless act of mental discipline after another. You want to know why some succeed and others stay stuck? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's mindset. The successful don't have fewer fears. They've just trained their minds to act anyway. The successful don't have perfect circumstances. They've trained their thoughts to command their responses. They are not superhuman. They are super focused, laser locked on what they want, immune to the noise, hardened by belief. And it's not genetics, it's conditioning. Daily, deliberate mental work. And you can have it too, but you've got to commit. You've got to stop feeding the fear. Stop renting space in your mind to people who never paid the price to build what you're building. Stop letting yesterday's mistakes write tomorrow's headlines. Elevate, rise. Push your mind beyond the shallow waters of what's easy and dive deep into the current of what's possible. Train it to love the struggle, to chase the stretch, to expect the extraordinary not as fantasy, but as your natural habitat. Because the mind, once stretched by a new level of belief, can never return to its original size. And that's where the real freedom begins. When your thoughts no longer shrink to fit your past, but expand to embrace your future. And when your future calls not in a whisper, but in a thunderous roar of potential, you no longer flinch. You no longer cower. You stand tall. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are prepared. Prepared not by luck, but by mindset. Because you've built a mind that does not break under pressure, but becomes sharper in it. A mind that does not run from adversity, but walks toward it like a lion, toward the hunt, calm, confident, hungry. And this hunger, it's not for attention, not for validation. It's for elevation, to rise, to stretch, to see what you're truly made of when there are no guarantees. Because the greatest battle you will ever fight is the one between who you are and who you were destined to be. That war is won in the mind first. Before the muscles, before the money, before the milestones, it starts here, in the silent moments, in the decisions no one sees, in the refusal to let fear make your choices, in the discipline to think higher when everything around you screams lower. Because when you elevate your mindset, you don't just change your life, you change your lineage. You rewrite the narrative. You become the one who breaks the cycle, who ends the generational fear, the poverty of thinking, the inherited limitations. You become the architect of a new story, a story where faith is louder than fear, where purpose outweighs pressure, where greatness is not a fantasy, it's a standard. And you live it daily, not in fits and starts, not when it's convenient, but as a way of life. Because the elevated mind no longer needs permission. It moves. It acts. It speaks vision, breathes discipline, and bleeds intention. This is your power. This is your weapon. This is your freedom. But you must guard it. You must protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. The wrong thoughts are poison. They seem small, harmless, but they erode the foundation of your belief, one subtle doubt at a time. Catch them early. Replace them ruthlessly. Speak the truth louder than the lies. Because the truth is this: you are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your feelings. You are the thinker, the decider, the shaper of what comes next. And when you elevate your mind, the world must rise to meet it. Opportunities appear where doors once closed. Allies emerge where enemies once stood. Energy flows where fear once ruled. Because you've stopped living on default and started living on purpose. And with that purpose comes fire, clarity, conviction. You no longer dabble in dreams, you own them. You claim your space, take up your territory, and lead with intention. Because that's what the elevated mind does. It leads. It commands. It does not ask, can I? It declares, watch me. And the world, at first, will doubt you. They'll question. They'll resist. Because your rise threatens their excuses. Your elevation exposes their hesitation. But keep rising, because soon they'll follow. Not because you asked them to, but because your example became too loud to ignore. This is your time to think bigger, to believe deeper, to live higher, to elevate your mindset until it becomes the gravity that pulls every other part of your life up with it. Greatness doesn't knock once and walk away. It waits, watches, stands outside the door of your mind until you decide not once, but again and again to invite it in, to host it like royalty, to serve it with the best of your focus, your hunger, your heart. The mind that is truly elevated understands this. Arrival is a myth. Growth has no finish line. There is no summit where you sit down and say, I've made it. Because the higher you climb, the more you realize there's always another level. And that's not discouragement. That's liberation. That means you never have to stop. That means the hunger is sacred. That means the elevation doesn't expire. It evolves. Let others seek comfort. Let others chase ease. You chase expansion. You chase the fire. You chase the next version of yourself that's waiting beyond the edges of your current capacity. Because that's what the elevated mind does. It seeks pressure. Not for punishment, but for progress. It understands that diamonds are born under fire, that steel is forged in heat, that character is revealed in how you think when everything is on the line. So you train for it. You train your thoughts the way warriors train their reflexes under stress, under fatigue, under chaos. You build a mind that doesn't just survive hard days, it shines through them. Because clarity is a skill. Focus is a skill. Vision is a skill. And skills must be trained, tested, and trusted, not once, but relentlessly. And you don't do it for applause. You don't do it for the crowd. You do it because it's who you decided to become. You do it because one elevated thought, just one, can detonate an entire chain reaction of breakthrough. One elevated thought can stop the cycle of fear. One elevated thought can reverse years of self-doubt. One elevated thought can flip a switch from I can't to watch me. And from that one switch, everything changes. Momentum begins. Energy surges. Vision sharpens. The fog lifts. And now, you're dangerous. Not because of how loud you are, not because of your resume, but because of the silence you've conquered, the voices you've defeated, the inner world you've mastered. You no longer need permission. You are permission. You no longer wait for signs. You become the signal. You no longer echo other people's beliefs. You build your own. And the beauty of it? This power has always been there. It was buried, forgotten, covered by layers of conditioning and compromise. But now it's rising. You're rising. Not as an accident, but as a decision. A sacred choice to think higher, to believe stronger, to walk through this life not asleep, but awake. I'll keep this going because this elevation is just beginning. You are awakening not to some new strategy, not to some trendy tactic, but to the truth that was always yours. You are the gatekeeper of your life, and the gate is your mind. Everything that comes into your life passed through that gate first. Every thought that became belief, every belief that became behavior, every behavior that became identity, and every identity that shaped your results. So, if you want a new outcome, you don't beg for change, you become change. You change the code at the root level, where thoughts are born, where decisions take shape, where your destiny waits to be commanded. You want more? Think more. Not more thoughts, better thoughts. Sharper, stronger, more aligned, more dangerous to doubt, more lethal to limitation. Thoughts that interrupt the cycle of self-sabotage and inject certainty where fear used to live. Because fear, if left unchallenged, becomes a prophet. It will tell you things about your future that are not true. And if you believe it long enough, you will build a life to match its lies. But belief backed by a powerful mindset, that becomes an army. It becomes the fire in your eyes, the steel in your spine, the engine under your ambition. Because belief gives you permission to act, and action births momentum, and momentum becomes identity. You are no longer a thinker who wonders if he can. You are a force who knows he must. And this mindset, this fire you're building, it's not just for you. It's for everyone who will rise because you rose. Everyone who will find their strength because you stopped making excuses. Everyone who needed proof that it was possible and saw you become it. That's the responsibility of an elevated mind. It's not just about success, it's about significance. Not just about winning, but leading. Not just about becoming powerful, but about making others powerful because of the standard you set. And it starts again and again in silence. When the world sleeps, when no one's watching, when your excuses are loud and your energy is low, that's when the real mindset work is done. That's where the elevation becomes permanent. In the choices no one claps for, in the days that feel like grind, in the moments when you choose to believe anyway, even when the scoreboard says 0, even when the world says no, even when your past says you can't, you look it dead in the eyes and you say, watch me. Because mindset isn't just belief. It's battle. It's blood. It's sweat. It's spiritual warfare against the part of you that was trained to settle. The old voice that still whispers, this is good enough. And you answer with a roar, no, I was made for more. You were made to stand at the edge of what's possible and step beyond it. Again and again and again. Not as a fluke, not as a lucky break, but as a lifestyle. This is what it means to elevate your mindset, to live in defiance of limitation, and to rise until your very existence is a challenge to mediocrity. And if that fire's still rising, good, because I'm not stopping yet, because we are not finished until your old mindset is dust beneath your feet. Until the small version of you, the one who hesitated, who waited for signs, who whispered instead of roared, is unrecognizable in the mirror. Because the moment you elevate your mindset, you do more than think differently. You see differently. Obstacles don't look like endings. They look like invitations. Invitations to grow, to sharpen, to dominate. Setbacks don't feel like failure. They feel like feedback. Pain doesn't become a problem. It becomes your platform. You stop asking, why me? And start declaring, try me. You stop walking into the room hoping to be liked. You walk in prepared to lead. And not because you're better than anyone, but because you finally became better than who you were. That's the secret. It was never about comparing to others. It was always about conquering yourself. The war has never been outside. It's always been internal. The battlefield is your beliefs. The enemy is within. And every time you win that inner war, every time you choose focus over distraction, discipline over impulse, vision over emotion, you expand your territory. Your standards rise. Your goals grow teeth. Your actions take on a new level of heat, not because you're trying harder, but because you're thinking higher. And people will feel it. They won't be able to put their finger on it, but they'll sense it in your posture, in your presence, in the way you don't flinch when life throws punches. Because now you don't break under pressure. You break through it. And that's when you stop being reactive to life and start being creative in it. You stop surviving your circumstances and start sculpting your outcomes. You think like a builder. You move like a king. You carry a stillness that doesn't come from easy days. It comes from mastering the storm. And people will try to ask, how did you change? But they won't understand. Because the change didn't happen around you. It happened within you. It wasn't in what you did. It was in what you refused to believe anymore. You refused to believe that your past was a prison. You refused to believe that fear was fact. You refused to believe that success was reserved for someone else. You took the steering wheel of your own mind and turned it toward destiny, not doubt, purpose, not paralysis, power, not pity. And every day, that choice becomes your edge. The mindset becomes your armor, your weapon, your compass. Because now you think like a warrior, and warriors don't wait to be saved. They build their own salvation. One brick, one belief, one act of unshakable clarity at a time. This is your rise. This is your edge. This is your elevation. And as you rise, the air gets thinner. Fewer people walk this high. The conversations change. The distractions fall away. The urgency grows. Because once you've seen what's possible with an elevated mind, you can't go back. You won't go back. That version of you has gone buried under the weight of every disciplined thought, every forged belief, every morning you chose to win before the sun rose. This is the elite level, not because it looks flashy, but because it's real. Because here, success isn't the prize, integrity is, alignment is, peace is, the quiet, powerful knowing that you are becoming exactly who you said you would be. You speak less, you build more. You complain less, you create more. You fear less. You feel more intensity, gratitude, clarity, responsibility. Responsibility not just for where you're going, but for what you're becoming. Because you're no longer just a man chasing goals. You're a man becoming a guardian of vision. You're the protector of purpose, the one who watches over his thoughts like gold. Because you've learned one wrong thought, left unchecked, can detour your destiny. One lazy belief can destroy an empire. So, you stay sharp. You don't flirt with doubt. You don't entertain indecision. You don't tolerate mental laziness. Because you are not who you were, you are who you decide to be every single day. And every day, you choose excellence. Not sometimes. Not when it's easy. Every day. And when life tries to pull you down, and it will, you no longer panic. You breathe. Because pressure doesn't shake the elevated mind, it activates it. It triggers the next level of creativity, the next gear of resolve. You start to look at your pain differently, not as punishment, but as preparation, a test of what you've built, a mirror showing you who you've become. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Your mind is either making you stronger or it's sabotaging your life. There is no neutral ground. There is no pause. It's either reinforcing your future or recycling your past. And if you let it recycle, you will relive the same failures, the same patterns, the same stories, dressed in different days. But if you elevate, if you choose to think higher when everything says sink lower, if you hold the line when the world says give in, if you build a mind that cannot be moved, you will see miracles, not outside you, within you. The miracle of becoming the man who can't be broken, who doesn't need the perfect day to dominate it, who doesn't chase success to feel worthy because he already walks in worth. That's what this elevation is really about. It's not about noise, it's about truth. And you are finally thinking in a way that honors who you were born to be. And it won't be over, not today, not ever. Because to live with an elevated mindset is to commit to the eternal climb, to reject the myth of arrival, to embrace the path, not the peak, to love the process more than the prize. You don't wake up and say, I've made it. You wake up and ask, what more am I capable of today? That's the difference. The average man hopes the world will go easy on him. The elevated man sharpens himself for whatever may come, because he knows the world isn't obligated to cater to his comfort, but he is obligated to command his response. He becomes the thermostat in every room. He carries temperature, not just talent. He speaks with gravity, not just volume. And his life becomes proof not of perfection, but of persistence, of presence, of precision. Because every moment he chose to master his mind, he was quietly crafting a world that others would call extraordinary. But he knows the truth. The world didn't hand it to him. He built it from belief, from focus, from unshakable standards of thought. And what you think is what you become. So you hold your thoughts like gold. You don't cheapen them with gossip. You don't soil them with blame. You elevate them with questions that challenge your soul. What am I really here to do? Who do I refuse to be anymore? What would it look like to live completely free from fear? Not someday, not in theory, but now, today, because the elevated mindset does not wait for life to change. It becomes the change that forces life to shift. And the man who holds that mindset becomes magnetic. Not because he seeks to impress, but because he embodies truth. You can feel it in his silence. You can see it in his discipline. You can hear it in the way he speaks. Calm, clear, clean. Because clarity isn't something he chases, it's something he creates through action, through stillness, through the daily practice of choosing to think above the noise. That's the real edge. Not how loud you are, but how quiet your inner world is when everything else is screaming. Not how many battles you win, but how many you don't need to fight, because your energy is guarded, your focus is sacred, and your mission is too massive to be derailed by the petty. That's mindset mastery. And this journey you're on, it's the most important battle you will ever fight. Not because it's about you, but because when you elevate, everyone around you rises. Your family, your business, your team, your legacy, they all feed off your frame. So strengthen it, solidify it, elevate it until there's no room left in your mind for weakness, no space for doubt, no corner where smallness can hide. Because you've arrived not at the top, but at the place where you finally refuse to go back down. And now you rise forever. Because once you've tasted the view from the elevated mind, you no longer fit in the valleys of your former thinking. You walk differently. You respond differently. You decide differently. And your past, it stops being a chain. It becomes fuel. You stop dragging your history like a weight. You start standing on it like a platform. Everything you went through, the pain, the failure, the confusion, it forged this moment. And you decide, I will not waste it. You rise with it. You own it. You turn scars into structure. You turn shame into shape. You turn silence into strategy. Because nothing is wasted in the mind that's elevated. Every mistake becomes data. Every setback becomes depth. Every delay becomes discipline. And now your perspective is weaponized. You no longer curse the hard days, you thank them. Because you realize resistance is not the enemy. It's the gym. It's the gift. It's the exact thing that built the strength you're using today. This is why you can no longer afford to think like you used to. You're carrying too much now. Too much purpose. Too much weight. Too much legacy. The people watching you, they don't need another motivator. They need a model. Someone who lives what they speak. Someone who refuses to quit. Someone who shows up even when the crowd goes quiet. And that someone is you. You're no longer running from pain, you're running toward purpose. Because once your mindset is elevated, you don't ask, what can I get from the world? You ask, what can I give to it? You stop living in reaction and start living in creation. You realize the life you want isn't on a shelf, it's in your mind. It's not locked behind luck. It's accessed through inner alignment, through mental warriorship, through unwavering standards that say, this is who I am now, period. Not maybe. Not if I feel like it. Not when it's easy. Now, every day, every thought, every room you walk into, you bring the elevation with you. Because that's what happens when you stop waiting for the world to rise, and you rise first. Your mind becomes an instrument of purpose, not a playground for fear. You don't just want more, you expect more. Not from entitlement, but from internal clarity. From the knowing that you were built for more. from the proof that you've trained for more, from the decision that you will not stop, not when it's hard, not when it's lonely, not when no one understands the fire inside you. Because this fire is not a phase. It's not hype. It's not borrowed. It's you now. And it doesn't burn out. It builds. Because the fire inside the elevated mind doesn't flicker. It forges. It forges character. It forges vision. It forges the unshakable clarity of someone who's been to war with himself and won. And you can see it in his eyes, not the arrogance of one who has never fallen, but the authority of one who has risen every single time. And that is what separates the ordinary from the unstoppable. The ordinary waits to feel ready. The unstoppable trains to be ready. And that training is mental. Every thought you conquer sharpens your edge. Every limiting belief you dismantle adds another layer of steel to your identity. Until you're not just thinking differently, you are different. You walk into uncertainty, not with hesitation, but with hunger. Because the elevated mind does not run from pressure, it demands it. It looks at chaos and says, this is where I grow. This is where I dominate. This is where I become. It turns pain into precision. It turns obstacles into optimization. It turns adversity into advantage, not because it's easy, but because you've conditioned your mind to see everything through the lens of elevation. And the world can't keep up with that. Because most people are chasing comfort. They're chasing the weekend. They're chasing likes and validation. You're chasing truth. You're chasing growth. You're chasing the highest version of yourself, not because you're broken, but because you refuse to leave your potential on the table. That's what legacy is. Legacy is not built by people who followed the crowd. Legacy is built by those who elevated their mind above the noise and then lived there. They built when others doubted. They created when others criticized. They stayed calm when the world panicked, not because they had answers, but because they had themselves. And now you do too. You've built something in your mind that no one can take away. A standard, a code, a resolve so pure that it echoes into every room you enter. You become the man people rely on, not because you promise, but because you prove. You live your message. You embody your beliefs. You breathe purpose. And that kind of presence, it's rare, it's sacred, and it comes from the daily, deliberate, disciplined choice to elevate, to rise, to refuse to think like a man who quits. Because you didn't come this far to stop. You didn't break those patterns to settle. You didn't rise above who you were just to live as a watered-down version of who you could be. So keep rising, keep elevating, because what's coming for you on the next level of mindset will make everything you've overcome worth it. And now, standing at the edge of who you were and who you must become, you face the most powerful question a man can ask himself. What will I tolerate from myself no longer? Because elevation demands elimination. You cannot rise while still carrying the beliefs that broke you. You cannot soar with the excuses that grounded you. You cannot build a future from the same thoughts that destroyed your past. This is where the real shift happens. Not when you feel inspired, but when you feel responsible. When you realize that your mind is not just yours, it belongs to the generations that follow you, to the people who count on you, to the version of you 5 years from now who is either celebrating your decisions or paying for your indecision. That's what's at stake. Every thought matters. Every belief counts. Every time you allow small thinking to take root, you water the weeds in the garden of your potential. And if you don't pull those weeds violently, consistently, unapologetically, they will strangle your destiny. So you sharpen the blade of your awareness. You cut off doubt at the source. You kill comparison. You execute fear, not by waiting, not by hoping, but by acting every single day. Because the elevated mind is not passive. It is not polite. It is aggressive in the pursuit of purpose. It is violent toward limitation. It is a disciplined force of nature that does not flinch in the face of impossible. Because once your mind rises, impossible becomes laughable. It's no longer a wall. It's a mirror showing you what you still believe about yourself. So break it, smash it, rebuild yourself thought by thought, belief by belief, until there's nothing left in your inner world that whispers average. You are not average. You are not common. You are not explainable. You are exceptional, not because of genetics, not because of luck, but because you chose to elevate when everyone else decided to escape. This is what it means to be dangerous. Not to the world, but to the doubt that once lived inside you. You've made your mind your kingdom now. Guard it like a gate, build it like a temple, rule it like a king, and let the world feel what happens when a man thinks at the level of legacy. This is your time. This is your standard. This is your elevation, and now you never come back down.